Welcome everyone to a very special edition of From Darkness to Light. I'm delighted to be here with Ben Morrison from Manchester. You're going to hear his story in a little bit of time. You'll see that Ben is someone completely inspiring and has developed an amazingly positive outlook on life, despite what has happened to him over the last few months. We're going to get we're going to get into that in a second. But firstly, Ben, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I feel honoured based on the previous people that you've had. I feel like I've got some big shoes to fill.
There you are. We love the Mancunian accent. I feel very much at home over here.
It's because we're so friendly up north. That's what it is.
That's definitely true. That's definitely true. I think for every one London smile, there are two Northern smiles, right?
That's correct. I mean, despite the rain and everything else over here, we all keep smiling. Well, the majority.
Brilliant. Okay, let's get to the backstory and then the story and then the coping mechanisms. So you are from Manchester, born and bred, attended King David School.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. Okay, and then headed off to university.
Yeah. So I went to university at Leeds. Never really wanted to go too far. I wanted to be close enough to home that I could get my washing done if I needed to, but far enough away to have a bit of independence and a bit of fun.
Nice. Good Jewish boy, sounds like.
And at the time, Leeds was massive for kind of a big Jewish community. I mean, I remember going to Leeds and being forced to attend Hillel House by my parents because I think my older sister at the time met her husband when she went to Hillel, and they wanted me to have that Jewish kind of start to university. I went to Hillel House, and ironically, years down the line, had met my wife through Hillel House, who also lived there.
Wow.
But yeah, went to Leeds, studied event management, which I'm the first to hold my hands up. I'm not an intellectual. I'm a very practical kind of hands-on kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely loved every single minute of it. I'm not going to bore you with some of the fun stories that took place whilst on kind of placements at university, but it certainly tested whether events was for me, and I came out the other side. And then after that, I actually moved back to Manchester and had a full-time job in event management.
Wow. What was that? What was that event? Because that's going to be part of the story, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was the events business?
So I went to go and work at an event management company. Unfortunately, they're no longer open. This was, possibly about 2006, I'd say, something like that. And at the time, event management wasn't really as big as it is now. It was kind of at the beginnings of people doing bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings and corporate events, and people used to turn around and go, "Oh my gosh, it's more of a luxury and more of a posh thing to have, rather than a need for someone who is just in a full-time job and needs a bit of assistance because they've not got the time to do it."
Got it.
Worked there for approximately about 3 years, and for one reason or another, we split ways, me and the boss, and I needed to go and get a job very quickly. I've always worked, and I went to go and work at an estate agent's, which was one of the best things I ever did, because despite now being unable to stop talking, at that time, I was a little bit shyer, didn't have as much confidence, and it really kind of grabbed me and made me come out my shell more. And at that point, I was starting to get a few inquiries about events and would I be interested in doing them on the side. And one night I literally came home after trying to juggle too many balls of doing events at the weekend and property during the week. I turned to my wife and literally said, "You know what? I need to hand my notice in." And like many wives, when you've got one child at that time and now we've got two, she was like, "Well, how are we going to pay the mortgage? How are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to eat? What's going to," as you can imagine.
Practical side.
And I said, "We just will. I think we're going to have to take this risk and we're going to have to go for it." Handed my notice in the next day, and the rest was somewhat history. And in 2011, set up We Are Events. And I was so fortunate that I literally worked my bottom off to make sure that that event management company became my life and allowed me to give my wife and my kids the life that they deserve and need. So at that point in 2017, 18, my company it quadrupled by 240%.
Wow.
We ended up becoming a team of 4. We moved offices in March 2020
Wow.
to double the size, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah, let's get to that part of the story, because that is really the centerpiece, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
So the pandemic hit, and
yeah,
there were a couple of real tragedies here. There was the family side, and then there's
yeah,
the business side. So
yeah.
I mean, go on.
So I mean, to kind of put it into perspective, March comes, I've moved into big offices, I've got a team ready and raring to go. We're in a great place, everything's somewhat coming together. I feel so happy we've redecorated this amazing space. And then I lock the door. It's as if someone's unplugged the phone, no emails are coming. And for approximately maybe 4 or 5 weeks, it was as if, what am I meant to do? It's hard to put in perspective when I was never at home. I was basically meetings most evenings, working most weekends. People used to joke with me and say, do your kids even know who you are? And all of a sudden, I'm now at home permanently, and I'm getting under my wife's feet. I suffer severely with OCD. So you can imagine every time there's a toy left out, I'm trying to tidy it up. Um, and you become very quickly aware that what's going on, what can I do? I'm used to being on the go. Whilst all that was happening, obviously the world was being overtaken by coronavirus at its first kind of peak. And I had at that point, my dad turned ill with it. He ended up being rushed into a ambulance, and at the point where we had to force the ambulance to come, he was very stubborn, my dad. And my mum and I called him and I screamed down the phone and I just said, Dad, you can't do this to us. You need to listen. We need to get an ambulance to come. Ambulance came and they put him in the back of the ambulance. And that was the last time my mum saw him. My mum never really got to say goodbye. She felt very angry because he wasn't listening to her. And my dad went off in an ambulance and he went to hospital with what we thought at the time was just blood pressure issues or diabetes. It was none of the symptoms that we're aware of today. Whilst that was happening, we had my brother-in-law who also wasn't well. My mum then contracted it. We then had my sister who had it. And it was getting to a point where my brother-in-law ended up going to hospital in the next door ward to my dad. I kind of made a joke at the time because that's how I just deal with things. I kind of try and make people feel at ease by joking. And I was saying to people, I'm like the modern equivalent of Florence Nightingale. I'm like running around here with bags of food and shopping and clothes, going to people's places and the hospital and people's homes and throwing it through windows. And
Gosh, wow.
that's how I dealt with it. I've always been on the go. I had to do it. And my brother-in-law came out. He became well. My sister did as well. And my mum, thank goodness, did. But at that point, my dad, unfortunately, was severely suffering. It took over him quite badly. But because everyone either had it or was still coming out of the other end of it, I was the only one who was well. I felt very blessed. I took the call and I was invited to come and see him in the hospital. This was on the Wednesday, and I went in there, and at the time, I think they put on me something like 3 gowns, 2 masks, gloves.
Wow.
And I mean, I probably tripled in size just walking into the room, and went in and I sat there and I held his hand and I just like you do, just have a general chat. And it was strange and it was weird, but I felt amazing being there. I'm very fortunate. I'm the only kind of I joke with my sisters because they always called me the golden child. And me and my dad used to, on my way to work, we had a set ritual. I'd call him every morning on the
So
way
nice.
to work. And that was our time. So the Wednesday came, we were told he was on end of life. We didn't know how long. I came out and like most people, yes, you all of a sudden break down, and I called my mum and she starts telling you stories about, well, one thing I quickly realized was, you never know what your mum and dad talk about when you're not there, and you don't know what they,
I know exactly what you mean.
yeah, they don't, they never said to you, Ben, we've just been talking about you and we're really proud of you, or we can't believe you once did that, or we loved coming to help you at work, or, and all of a sudden all this gushes out, and it's like a floodgate of my mum going, "Blah," like with everything, and it just hits you and you think, I've got no regrets. I am so blessed and lucky that for 35 years of my life, I had this amazing man to be a part of it, who taught me and gave me everything I ever needed. And unfortunately, yes, he then passed away on I think it was the Friday, and or the Saturday, I can't recall. And I had to, unfortunately, then go and tell the bad news to everyone else, because at the time it was too stressful for my mum to be getting the calls. And I went round and had to tell everyone that he passed, and it was strange. It was weird. We had a Zoom funeral. We had a Zoom shiver house, and I've got to say, especially, I can probably relate to a rabbi more than anyone else, that a shiver house for me, when people come in, and in a normal world of a shiver house, when you come in and everyone wishes you long life, the one thing you don't get is the same reaction you get on a Zoom, and that's that we allowed people to talk and tell their stories and memories, and it was amazing. It was the most incredible, magical thing, that we got to hear these stories from people that you wouldn't have got at a normal shiver house.
Right.
And I think, well, for me personally, it allowed that grieving process to be definitely a lot easier. And it had that element of what a shiver is and what it's about. And that's to ease you into not the loneliness, but certainly that start of your next chapter of your life.
Right. I mean, it's just amazing that you kept the positive attitude throughout. I mean, you've got to deal with the fact that your father's passed away. You've got to tell the family. I mean, that's just an incredible bout of positivity. Being able, you said, humor at times, but then kind of having the seriousness to let it all come out, and then being able to relate to the family as well.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I think I'm. Some would say, is it ever hit me, or? But I think that I realized at the time my mum needed me a lot more than I needed her, and she wouldn't mind me for saying it. She'd never paid a bill before. She'd never, my dad used to put petrol in the car for her. She was that old-fashioned kind of relationship. My dad did everything, and I'm very proud to say that she has turned her life around, and she wouldn't ever say that she's the most positive person, but she has become so positive because she has had to. And I said in a recent article that you either sink or swim at those times. And I had to swim. I wasn't willing to give up. So that was kind of that sounds like a long period of time, but it all happened within a week. And I think just as we were getting over that and trying to come to terms with what had happened, we then heard that my grandma, who at the time had moved into hospital, which was my mum's mum, also became very poorly, and we heard she was also then on end of life.
This was COVID as well?
So ironically not, there have been a couple of people who have typed incorrect things, but she unfortunately passed from pneumonia, and yet again, a very strange setup, and people have different beliefs and understandings of why things happen, but we had to get her back to Heathlands, where she actually lived, from the hospital. She came back, and this was on Father's Day, and the only reason I remember it was because I hadn't spent any time with my kids or my wife, because I'd been with my mum and grandma and everything else, and dealing with things from my dad. And I remember I went to go and see my grandma at Heathlands when they told us that she'd got back. She was in the room. I must have been there half an hour, 45 minutes. She unfortunately was already kind of, I'd say, unconscious, but I still feel like she might have squeezed my hand or known I was there. I then left. I went to go and pick up a takeaway for me and my wife to try and celebrate Father's Day in whatever way we could.
Nice. Salvaging. Nice.
Got home, and we're probably only talking a period of half an hour. I then get a call from my mum to say, Ben, and I honestly, I'd not even put a chip in my mouth yet. It was, Ben, your grandma's passed away.
Goodness.
And it was strange. I was like, don't be stupid. I've literally, I was only there half an hour ago. What? And I just said, she just wanted to be back at Heathlands. She wanted to be back where she called home. And I picked my mum up. We went to go and see my grandma. We said goodbye. And yeah, it was a very weird period of my life. It was between kind of April and May. And as we started to find our feet and understand what had happened, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit around and mope and think the world of events was going to come back, because I knew it wouldn't anytime soon. So rightly or wrongly, the only thing that was open at the time was a Costa coffee drive-through, which is in North Manchester. And everyone was going to it. There was cars deep of about 50 cars. And I thought, this is bonkers. Like, there must be something else people can do. And what I realized was that, rightly or wrongly, our country predominantly is made up of lazy-ish people who like things being brought to them. And if I can come up with a concept that brings a great service and great coffee and tea and hot chocolate and treats and luxurious kind of things to them and give them that experience, there might be something in it.
I just want to pause this for a second, because I don't think people quite appreciate the backdrop over here, that unfortunately you've lost your father, you've lost your grandmother, your business is basically finished, and you've got the wherewithal to then start thinking, well, how can I move? You know what I mean? How can I develop something new? I don't know if you realize that, Ben, that itself is quite impressive.
Yeah.
A lot of people would have just, you said sank or swam. A lot of people would have sank.
And I'm not going to lie and say I didn't have a few gin and tonics.
I think for some people, even gin and tonics wouldn't have done it,
It's when you realize you're not having it with the tonic that you've gone too far. I think that
it's like Leeds custom, right?
Exactly. I think that it was, I'm never going to say I was renowned for being the most positive in the world, but I think there had to already be an element of that in my blood to make me get up and go. But I've always been on the go. My dad has always been on the go. Mm-hmm. He's always worked. And I suppose I'm just not used to being at home. And maybe that was a positive, that I didn't just want to be at home. I didn't want to be stuck in the same four walls. As much as I love my family, don't get me wrong, I knew I had to do something. And I've always had this stupid love for coffee. And
so go on, tell us what happened. I'm going to see if I can find this article, meanwhile, from the Manchester Evening News.
I went on eBay and I literally bid on, it must have been about 20 different smart cars. And one guy came back and he said, well, if you're willing to bring cash and buy it tomorrow, you can come and pick it up in Chester. Okay. So I told my missus and I said, right, we're driving to Chester in the morning. I'm going to pick up a smart car. And we did. I went to go and pick it up and I drove it home. And I thought, what the heck have I done?
So this is the smart car, right?
Yeah. And I felt that I was already a bit committed. Like, whatever happened, I could have sold the smart car if it didn't work, but I put it in the car. I very quickly built kind of a design within it with the contact. And I just literally went out.
Right, I was trying to find the article. I actually couldn't share it, but it's okay.
But I went out and I contacted all my previous clients. I contacted friends who have businesses. I went to parks, to football pitches, you name it. I went to it and I drove people mad to say, you need to get a coffee from us. This is going to be amazing. You'll love it. It's great coffee. We've got a range of milks. We can do kosher milk. We can do oat, almond, soya, whatever it may be. And it just it was weird. People just started seeing it and talking about it. And I never saw it as a business, not in a million years. I saw it as something that would keep me going, keep my mind going, and really, rightly or wrongly, I suppose, distract me from what had happened those months before. Because this was August time, all this happened, and we were still very lucky, even in Manchester, with the great weather. So I was just out and about, just driving, and I suppose looking back now, I'm one of the lucky ones, because weeks down the line, and now in January 21, we now have 7 smart cars.
Oh gosh, wow.
We have 12 employees in them.
Wow.
I have an amazing corporate partnership that we're orchestrating with Kuka, the boiling water tap, that we're doing all of this year.
Wow.
And it's all a bit strange, a bit surreal, a bit weird, and any other words you can use to describe it. But I'm lucky. I don't believe, some people say, oh, you make your own luck, but I'm a true believer that I know this business and this whole concept and everything about it has something to do with my dad. I know it does. He loved anything like this. And there's some kind of weird connection there, that if he was here, and I'm sure he's looking down thinking, why couldn't you have done it sooner so I could have driven one of the smart cars? I know that he would have turned to me and said, you know what, this is just brilliant. I love every minute of it. And I'm humbled, and yes, I feel honored that people want me to talk on things like this. But my biggest thing at the moment is that, yes, life is too short, and yes, last year was really upsetting, and it was heartbreaking, and never in my worst million years would I ever want anyone to have to lose a father, a grandmother, anyone at all that's close to them. But the one thing I can say is that I don't have any regrets. I'm so lucky that I got to cherish those amazing memories, and that it's important for me, and I say it to my sisters and to my mum, that we keep those legacies alive, and that we talk about them every day. We talk about the happy things and the funny things and everything that makes you smile, because you can turn on the TV now and it'll depress you. You can turn it on in the morning and it'll depress you, because that's the way that the news is. It's outlined to try and talk about doom and gloom. And for me, I want people to try and find the light at the end of the tunnel. And if that's talking about happy things and trying to find the better in one another, then what more can I ask for?
Amazing. Ben, I have to say, it's incredible. It's just incredible to learn that positivity, that resilience, and that like ability to get up and go. As you said, we don't always understand the reasons why things happen, both the successes and the challenges, the struggles, but to be able to run with them and to say, right, I'm grateful for the happy times, and now I'm going to make something from the challenges. That's an incredible thing. Ben, I have to say, firstly, thanks so much for spending this evening with us. And I just hope that positivity radiates outwards. Hopefully we're in the last few months of the pandemic, but the coffee will go on.
100%.
Amazing. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.